This is the tutorial video for the Unit 3B retest practice. Number 1, write the quadratic equation in vertex form, given the vertex and the directrix. The first thing that we want to do is plot the things that are given so that we can determine what direction this parabola is going to open. So the vertex is at -5, -7. The directrix is at y equals -4. A y equals equation is a horizontal line. So this information tells us we are going to have a vertical parabola that is going to open down because it always opens away from the directrix. Now for the equation, we'll need the vertex. We will also need the p-value, which is the distance from the directrix to the vertex with including the direction. So since it's going down, it's got to be negative. We're going down 3 units. So that's my p-value. So I'm going to start with the vertical form of the equation with the p-value, and then we'll algebraically convert it to vertex form. So I have x minus h, my h is -5, so minus -5 becomes +5 squared, equals 4p, my p is -3, so that would become -12, y minus k, so y minus -7 becomes a +7. To convert this to vertex form takes 2 steps. So we're trying to isolate y. So I need to get rid of this -12. I can either divide by -12 or multiply by the reciprocal on both sides. So if I multiply both sides by -1/12, then I can cancel those. Now I need to move this +7 to the other side by subtracting 7. So this would be my vertex form of the equation. Number 2, find the quadratic equation given the vertex and the focus. So again, we'll start by plotting the pieces of information that were given. The vertex is -2, 3. The focus is -6, 3. So for this parabola, it will have to open to the left because it's got to always open towards the focus. Because it doesn't specify which equation to use, I'm going to use the simplest equation. So my horizontal equation, using the p-value, and again the distance from the vertex to the focus. Since I'm going to the left, it's negative, and I'm going 4 units. So my p-value would be -4. So for the horizontal function equation, I have y minus k, which is 3, squared equals 4 times negative 4 is negative 16. X minus h. H is negative 2, so minus negative 2 becomes a plus 2. Number 3, solve the following quadratic and linear system of equations. We are going to use the calculator to do this. So when we solve a system of a quadratic and a linear system, we can have either 0, 1, or 2 solutions. So I'm going to start by putting these two equations into y equals. And graphing it. So in this particular situation, I am looking at 2 solutions because there are 2 intersection points. To find your solutions on the calculator, second trace. The 5th option is intersect. And it's automatically going to find the intersection point that is the closest to where your cursor is. And we're going to hit enter 3 times. That gives us the first intersection point is negative 2, 6. And we write these like an ordered pair. Second trace 5. To find the second point, I've got to move the cursor so that it's closer to the other intersection point and hit enter 3 times. And I get 6, negative 2. Number 4, factoring. I'm looking for 2 things that multiply to give me negative 20 and add to 1. So that would be 5 and negative 4. So factored form would be x plus 5 times x minus 4. For B, this is the difference of squares. So we're going to use the pattern a squared minus b squared, and it's always going to factor as a plus b times a minus b. So x squared minus 36 will factor as x plus 6, x minus 6. C, we only have 2 terms, but they have a GCF. So the factor that they have in common is a 6 and an x. So when I factor that out, I am left with x minus 6. For D, we have an a value that's not 1. So we're going to start by multiplying a times c to get a negative 8 in the top of our x factor, and 7 goes on the bottom. So 2 things that multiply to negative 8 and add to 7 would be 8 and negative 1. And I am going to write this a value plus 8, and the a value again minus 1, and then the one that has a factor in common, I can reduce by 2. So I end up with v plus 4 after this term, or this binomial reduces. This one, there is nothing in common, so it'll stay 2v minus 1. Number 5, solving. We are going to solve by factoring. So for a, 2 things that multiply to 8 and add to -9 would be -1 and -8. So x plus 1 x minus 1 and x minus 8 equals 0. So to get the actual solutions, we set each one of those equal to 0 and solve. So we get x equals 1 and x equals 8. B, 2 times -7 is -14. So 2 things that multiply to -14 and add to -13, -14 and 1. So I've got 2x minus 14, 2x plus 1, and this first one has a GCF of 2 that I need to reduce by. So I get x minus 7 and 2x plus 1. Setting each factor equal to 0. If I subtract 1 and then divide by 2, I get x equals 7 and x equals -1/2. On C, we've got to have the equation equal to 0 before we can solve. So we're going to start by moving these terms to this side of the equation. So I get a squared plus 4a minus 12 equals 0. Now I can factor. So 2 things that multiply to -12 and add to 4, 6 and -2. So we get a plus 6 times a minus 2 equals 0. Set each factor equal to 0 and we get a equals -6, where a equals 2. Number 6, sketch the graph of the parabola. Couple of things. The vertex we're going to need, and the p-value. So my vertex is going to be -1, -3. My p-value is going to be -1 divided by 4. So I'm going to plot the vertex at -1, -3. And this parabola will open to the left because it's negative, it's got a negative p-value, and because it is a y-squared equation, which is horizontal. So the p-value means that I would go 1/4 to the right to find the directrix and 1/4 to the left to find the focus. My parabola would open to the left. Number 7, write an inequality in vertex form for each graph. The vertex here is at -3, -4. The A value, this opens down, so it's going down 1/1. So A is -1. So I've got negative x plus 3 squared minus 4. Now we are shading relative to the vertex, we are shading above. So that's going to be greater than, and it's a dotted line, so it does not need to be greater than or equals to. Number 8, the vertex of this function is at 2, 1. My A value, I'm going up 2/1, so my A is 2. So I have 2 times x minus 2 squared plus 1. And this one is shaded below, so it'll be less than, and it's a solid line, so it'll be or equals to.